Welcome to This Explainer. I want you to take a moment and really cast your mind back to the early days of the internet. We're talking about a time of screeching dial-up modems, of obscure, completely unmoderated message boards, and of this very real, very visceral fear of accidentally downloading a corrupted file that could just absolutely destroy your family's computer. I mean, it was the Wild West. And in those unregulated, shadowy corners of the early web, a totally different kind of virus was rumored to exist. We're not talking about a line of code designed to steal your passwords or drain your bank account. No, this was rumored to be an image file specifically designed to break your mind. Today, we are dissecting one of the most legendary, genuinely terrifying, and deeply enduring internet mysteries of all time. We are going to look closely at the exact anatomy of a digital curse. We're talking about Smile.dog.
So I really have to ask you directly, have you heard of Smile.jpg? Maybe you've seen it lurking in the thumbnail of some late-night video, or perhaps a friend dared you to search for it years ago when you were a kid. It's one of those things spoken about in hushed tones across digital forums, and not just as a creepy image, but as a genuine digital contagion. A file that doesn't just scare you, but allegedly infects you. And the sheer lack of verified information about its origins back in the day, that only fueled the panic. People actually whispered that the true file was systematically scrubbed from Wikipedia, buried away in the darkest web archives by administrators, and that the images you see circulating today are merely safe, watered-down replicas. But the terrifying question was always, what happens if you find the real one?
Well, here is the absolute baseline of our dread, the infamous Smile.jpg. I want you to listen closely to the details that alleged victims describe after claiming to have seen the original, unaltered file. They describe a dimly lit room, illuminated only by the incredibly harsh, singular flash of a camera, and in the center sits this dog-like creature. It vaguely resembles a Siberian Husky, but something is fundamentally, horrifically wrong with it. The muzzle of the beast is split into this unnaturally wide slasher film grin, revealing 2 rows of very white, very straight, human-looking teeth. Its eyes reflect the camera flash with this cold, almost demonic glare. And if you look to the far left side of the frame, emerging from the pitch-black darkness of the room, is an empty human hand, caught in this really unsettling beckoning gesture. It is an image entirely designed to bypass your logic and strike directly at the primal fear centers of the brain.
Section 1. The Smile.jpg phenomenon.
Okay, let's dive into this because, as the lore goes, this is not just some spooky photograph you scroll past on social media and forget about. It's reputed to be a legitimate hazard, essentially a trap waiting in your email inbox or, back in the day, hidden away on a discarded floppy disk. And the fictional symptoms associated with actually viewing this file, they are absolutely horrific. According to the legend, looking at the authentic Smile.jpg doesn't just make you jump, it induces immediate, severe physiological and psychological reactions. Victims are said to suffer from sudden onset temporal lobe epilepsy. They are gripped by this acute, inescapable anxiety. But the absolute worst part reportedly happens when they close their eyes. The epileptic fits are accompanied by intensely vivid, deeply disturbing nightmares that just repeat interminably. The victims don't just see the image in their mind's eye, they actually hallucinate the dog entity itself, entering their dreams, rendering them completely helpless and unable to speak. The image essentially burns itself into the victim's retinas and directly into their subconscious.
Section 2. The tragic case of Mary.
To truly understand the gravity of this digital legend, we really have to pivot to the foundational lore. We need to walk through the timeline of the most famous fictional victim in this entire story. The story itself is presented with absolute deadpan seriousness by its fictional narrator, who is this young amateur writer investigating the myth. In 1992, a woman named Mary E. was a system operator for a small Chicago-based bulletin board system. She had only been married to her husband, Terrence, for about 5 months when a mysterious hyperlink was posted to her board. Mary, along with an estimated 400 other anonymous individuals, clicked it. She saved the image to a floppy diskette, and according to the story, her life was forever altered. Fast forward 15 years to the summer of 2007. Our narrator arranges an in-person interview with Mary, but upon his arrival, she suffers a complete and total breakdown. She locks herself in her bedroom, sobbing hysterically and rambling incoherently about her nightmares. Her husband Terrence and the narrator just sit there, helpless outside the door for half an hour. The interview is a complete failure. Then the timeline reaches its incredibly grim conclusion. In March of 2008, Mary emails the narrator, confessing that the dog has been tormenting her every single night for 15 long years. Shortly after sending that email, Mary tragically ends her own life.
And this brings us to a moment of pure, concentrated, supernatural dread in the narrative. After his wife's tragic suicide, Terrence is left to sort through her belongings. And of course, he finds it. He finds the cursed floppy diskette containing Smile.jpg. In a fit of immense grief and righteous rage, he throws it directly into the fire to destroy it once and for all. But as the plastic melts and warps in the heat, Terrence reports that the diskette didn't just crackle in the flames like normal plastic would, it produced a chilling, incredibly distinct, quote, animal-like hiss. That specific detail masterfully elevates the story, right? It takes it from a depressing tale of psychological obsession and turns it into one of a literal demonic entity actually trapped within digital media.
Section 3. Mechanics of the curse.
So if it's not a standard computer virus destroying your hard drive, what exactly is the mechanism here? Spread the word, spread the word, spread the word. This is the singular, hypnotic, and utterly terrifying demand of the entity. When the Smile dog infiltrates the dreams of its victims, it doesn't just torture them for fun. It actually has an agenda. It renders them completely paralyzed in their sleep, forcing them to stare at that wide, human-toothed grin, and it repeats this exact phrase over and over again in the darkness. The entity promises that the torment, the seizures, and those horrible nightmares will only ever stop on one specific, highly sinister condition.
And this brilliantly illustrates the ruthless mechanics of the curse, which rely entirely on an infection cycle built on sheer human desperation. Think about it. A victim views the image, quite often receiving it disguised as a completely harmless chain email with a cheery subject line like, "Smile, God loves you." They open it, and they are immediately afflicted with the physical and mental symptoms. The dog then corners them in their dreams with its relentless demand. The only way to survive, the literally only way to save their own sanity, is to yield to the entity's blackmail. They must attach that image to a new email or hand someone a physical disk drive and forward it to a new, entirely unsuspecting person. The victims are essentially forced to become the active vectors of their own disease.
Which leads to the ultimate, brilliant trap of the story itself. After investigating Mary's death, our intrepid narrator checks his inbox and receives an email from an unknown user named elzahir82. The user casually claims they found the narrator's email on a random mailing list and says they are simply, quote, spreading the word. Attached to the email is the Smile.jpg file. The narrator opens it, and the entire cycle begins anew. The really chilling realization for the reader at this exact moment is that the very article they are currently reading, The Comprehensive Story of Smile Dog, was written by the narrator solely to fulfill the dog's demand. By learning the story and by viewing the image, you, the viewer, have just been infected.
Section 4. The real-world origins.
Okay, let's take a collective deep breath, drop the horror tone for a second, and turn the lights back on. We've experienced the legend. Now we are going to sharply pivot to an analytical, real-world internet history perspective, because we are going to fully gut this myth. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how perfectly the fictional lore contrasts with the actual, incredibly mundane reality of its creation. On one side, we have this incredibly dense, highly believable backstory, a 1992 Chicago bulletin board, 400 original victims, physical floppy disks, and a deeply tragic suicide. It literally feels like a true crime deep dive. But on the other side, we have the stark actual reality. The story was authored by a writer named Michael Lutz. It was first posted to the paranormal board of 4chan, which is known as /X, back in 2008. This was the absolute golden age of creepypasta, which, if you don't know, is a portmanteau of creepy and copypasta, meaning text that was copied and pasted across early forums. Lutz essentially crafted a masterful piece of interactive internet fiction. I want to make this impartially and absolutely clear. Despite the massive, lingering footprint this story has left on the internet, and despite the thousands of people over the years who genuinely claim to feel highly anxious just looking at the dog, no authentic quote-unquote Smile.jpg file has ever been verified as a source of real curses, literal seizures, or demonic visitations. The image is pure 100% fiction. It was deliberately and cleverly designed to evoke unease about unseen online threats. It plays heavily on the early internet fear of corrupted files destroying our expensive machines and the very real anxiety of receiving unexpected, weird attachments from total strangers. There is absolutely no real supernatural harmful visual file lurking out there on the dark web waiting to ruin your life.
Section 5. A modern memetic hazard.
But that raises a massive question. If it's completely fake, why on earth are we still talking about it more than a decade and a half later? To understand that lasting power, we need to look at what Smile Dog truly represents. It is practically a textbook example of a fictional memetic hazard.
This is a fascinating concept where information itself acts as a pathogen. You don't need to actually ingest a virus or breathe in a harmful bacteria. Merely being exposed to the idea, or in this specific case, looking at the image, infects your mind. To survive the infection, the host is forced to replicate the data and spread it to others. Smile.jpg took the frankly annoying, super mundane reality of 1990s and 2000s email chain letters, you know the ones, send this to 10 people or your crush will hate you and you'll have bad luck, and it elevated that exact mechanic into a deeply terrifying psychological threat.
Consider the absolute brilliance of this parallel for a second. In the real world, the format is just a junk chain email. In the lore, it's a supernaturally cursed file. In the real world, the consequence of breaking the chain is just some vague bad luck or slightly annoying inbox spam. In the lore, the consequence is incredibly vivid nightmares, a descent into insanity and eventual death. In the real world, you forward these things out of mild social guilt or just plain gullibility. But in the world of Smile.jpg, the motivator is pure, unadulterated supernatural terror. Michael Lutz essentially weaponized our everyday, mundane digital behaviors. He made the simple act of clicking forward a literal matter of life and death, turning every single viewer into an unwilling accomplice to a monster.
Smile.jpg is a masterpiece of early internet folklore because it understood exactly how we interact with digital media. It knew that human beings simply cannot resist a good mystery, and it knew that once a genuinely creepy idea takes root in our heads, it is incredibly hard to extract. It's a legend that smartly uses the very architecture of the internet as the ultimate haunted house. So, I leave you with this final provocative thought. The legend of the Husky with the human teeth might be safely, entirely debunked as a brilliant work of fiction, but the core mechanism it highlights, how incredibly quickly and uncontrollably viral information infects our minds and actually compels us to share it, is entirely real. Next time you hit forward on an image, a meme, or a story, will you wonder what you're really spreading? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember, always look closely at what might be lurking in the dark background of your screen.